now.
Okay, good. Ah, perfecto. Okay, so thank you very, very much for having me give the talk. And I'm very, very pleased to be in Argentina and Buenos Aires for the first time. I woke up with a big smile on my face this morning, realizing that I'm in another country, and it's really very exciting. So thank you very much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, let's just go through the order of flow.
You have it reverse.
Oh, do I? Okay, it's all right, I'm dyslexic, it doesn't matter. Okay, so the order of go of the presentation is to talk about the problématique, what is going on. And what I'm doing is I'm reacting to a comment that was made at the end of the last conference that there was not enough discussion about politics and about morality in the meeting that we had last year. So I'm going to try to introduce some of that discussion. I'm going to discuss what I call the institutional compass, which is a multi-criteria decision aid that I developed. And I'll give you 2 case studies, which are surprising ones, and give you some conclusions. There are 15 slides, so you can tell sort of how far along I'm going. Oops, oh yeah, there you go. Okay, chemistry has a bad reputation in the public domain because industrial scale production, distribution, and use of chemicals is not ecologically sustainable. We're in overshoot, where we have ecological collapse. What happens when an ecosystem collapses is that it is replaced by nature. It's not that there's a vacuum, you don't get a desert. Nature comes back again, but the new species that come are smaller, there's more disease, there's more invasive species. That is, there's a direction to collapse, and we're witnessing this on the planet. We have been irresponsible and we've done too much. On the other, and you all know all of the statistics, right? I mean, I could rattle off a whole bunch of things. But the industrial scale production of chemicals is not going to stop soon. We can't go back to pre-industrial existence. Present methods used to temper our chemical impact on the Earth's ecosystems include laws, financial incentives and disincentives, recycling, circular economy. This is the idea of using waste, right, from an industry, reusing it in order to make another product. An example of this is when we're starting to use fluoride in our toothpaste, right? We're using industrial waste in order to do something else. So you kind of contain the entropy in some sense, you delay the entropy, but you have to interfere, you have to use energy in order to hold that entropy stable. We have environmental impact assessments, which have to do with the legal part, life cycle analysis, which is a very sort of fluid concept, and there's different levels of sophistication in that, and it's very a little bit arbitrary at the end of the day. We have the UN development goals, which give us some sort of sense of direction of where we want to go, but they contradict each other. We have education, right? We talk about these issues sometimes, and we have education, and that doesn't only mean formal education, I also mean informal poster campaigns, attempts to educate people. There's moral pressure, right? People say, you shouldn't drop that piece of garbage on the sidewalk, you should pick it up, or you should recycle. We have conferences, COP27 conference, which I went to in Sharm el-Sheikh. I learned an awful lot going to that big conference. This is the UN trying to get a grip on climate change. It was not very significant what they came up with, even though thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars were spent, even though the carbon footprint was huge, the results were really quite a shambles. But I learned a lot. It was really interesting. Have I? Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you. Restoration of natural areas. We have waste management. We have political parties. So there's a lot of effort made to temper our overuse of the natural system. It's not enough. It's too slow, and it's piecemeal. There are countercurrents, which are very powerful. There's the consumer society. People want more stuff. We're being convinced by the media that we should have lots of stuff. If we buy things, we'll be happy, right? If you have more things, more objects, then you will become a happier person. There's a lack of sense of responsibility, collectively and individually. There's a sense of powerlessness. Look, there's 8 billion people on the earth. What impact can I possibly make? I'm tiny. Even if I do fly around and fly all the way to Argentina and back again in a year, it's not going to make that much difference. So there's a sense of powerlessness and also political disempowerment. There's a lot of distraction, right? So I feel so powerless. What do? I'm going to go and watch my Netflix now, and I'm just going to ignore the problem because that's going to be psychologically easier for me. There's a lot of confusion at high-level decision-making. There's the belief that GDP indicates well-being, and other measures, such as health measures, longevity measures, and so on, are not objective, or they're not comparable. And some people try to convert some of those measures into monetary measures, but it's disingenuous, it's very indirect, it's very artificial, and there are lovely mathematical techniques for doing it, but they're not measuring the thing directly anymore. If we not only want to survive, because humans will probably survive even if there is a lot of ecosystem collapse, but if we actually want to live well, we can't afford to make many more mistakes. Go on. There we go. So let me introduce a way of diminishing the mistakes. So the institutional compass is a multi-criteria decision aid. What does that mean? It means that we look at different things, not only money, but we're also looking at CO2 emissions. We're also looking at the health of the ecosystem, all of the indicators for health of an ecosystem. We look at social measures. We look at economic measures. We can look at whatever measures it is that are relevant. We to construct a compass, data is collected and analyzed for importance that is relative to a baseline. Importance is very simple. This is just when you represent data on a graph, you have an X and a Y axis. Your Y axis is how important it is, how high up that scale it is. So there are very easy, normal techniques. It's very intuitive how it is that you represent data. So that's just the importance. It's relative to a baseline, relative to what's normally going on. And then there's something new, another way of doing data analysis, which is in terms of quality. And this might actually be interesting for your qualia concept. I'm not sure, we'll have to discuss it. I haven't been able to work it out. But we look at equality on a scale from harmony through discipline to excitement. Harmony is everything is going fine, it's okay, it's very predictable, it's very stable, it's your post office job, it's basic education, it's just stable economy, predictability, maybe it's a bit boring. Discipline are the real problems that we're facing. We are proud to have self-discipline. Discipline is necessary. We need that stimulus, we need these problems that we face. We have to overcome problems, and they are real problems. There is death, there is sickness. There are real things that we are facing that we want to find solutions to, and we should not be afraid to face those things. And the third one is excitement. Excitement is when things are in flux, when there's a lot of unknowns, when we don't know what's going on. When we invest money, we take a risk. The risk might be a high risk, it might be a low risk. In society, we have sports teams, right? We watch the football match. We don't know who's going to win. That's very exciting. And these are three general qualities with which we analyze the data. So the scale, I use the word scale, it's not the best word, because it's expressed as a degree on a circle. Each data point is represented as a vector on a circle. So here's a sample data point. General feelings of the participants at the ISPC meeting in Buenos Aires in 2023, right? We imagine we did a questionnaire, and at the end, everyone seems to think, well, you give them some vocabulary, etc. They seem to go towards excitement, towards harmony. It's a nice excitement, right? It's not a terrible excitement. There's some money involved, but okay, most of us were able to make it. We make a compass reading. The data points are subjected to an algorithm to make one vector. The vector represents a whole table of data. It gives a global situation for the object analyzed, whether it's an institutional system, a chemical process carried out on an industrial scale. So I'm now going to give you some case studies of two different chemical processes and give you what the compass reading was. And they were both surprising ones. Before I give you the case study. If we are interested in sustainability, so this might be a general goal towards which we want to go because we realize that we're not living sustainably, if this is the case. And for some institutions, it's not the relevant direction. But if chemistry has a bad name, then this is more or less what we want to go towards. The direction is going to be harmony. There's lots of arguments to be given to that effect. Here's Udel plastics production. Now, I thought plastics were a sort of evil thing, right? So I predicted that it would be somewhere in discipline, there's something really bad going on. But it turned out when we did our analysis, we did one of the region of where this was being, where the plastic was being created, the city in which it was being created, and then we did the production process and we lifted all kinds of data. How do we analyze this? Okay, and this might be a bit small for people to read. Udel is a type of plastic manufactured in a place called Marietta, Ohio. Udel PSU resins are amorphous sulfone polymers, i.e. a type of plastic. It's used for making membranes for kidneys for people in the last stages of kidney failure. So it has a medical purpose. It's also used in electrical devices and in plumbing. Okay, so these are sort of necessary things. These are the types of plastics that are not going to go away, as opposed to your plastic bag that you maybe don't need. You can't, now in Kenya, you cannot bring a plastic bag into the country. You will be stopped at the border, right? Or they will fine you. In Ireland, they got rid of plastic bags a long time ago. So why was the compass reading in harmony? That was sort of weird. So you look at the data points. What are the data points pulling the arrow in this direction? The CO2 footprint happens to be pretty low. The waste management is responsible waste management in that factory, in that region. The factory workers are relatively well treated. The product, it fits the regional context, which is more or less the same, more towards discipline. So it's actually the production of Udel plastic is actually bringing the region more towards harmony. So the recommendation is carry on. Don't change anything. Next case study, the tequila industry in Mexico. Oh, now we're in discipline towards excitement. This is directly the opposite direction of sustainability. Why? So we look back at the statistics. As of fairly recently, 95% of the tequila industry is owned by foreign investors, Seagram's and Heineken. The product has been compromised. They're harvesting the agave plant earlier. They're using a lot of pesticides. They're using herbicides. This is a cactus. It doesn't need herbicides and pesticides normally, but they're doing this in order to speed up production. Waste from the industry is not controlled. This is Mexico, so the regional context is not very good. There's only one person who is checking 600 different industrial complexes for waste. There's one person. That person can't do all that work. And this leads to, and the lack of waste management leads to severe health problems in the local population, both human, animal, and plant population. So when you talk to people who cannot afford to buy water that is already in a bottle, Some of them have wells, and they will say, I will not let my cattle drink from the river because they will be poisoned, right? And I won't let my dog drink from the river. I won't let my children play close to the river. But if they can't afford it, then they start dying off. They have their brain problems and kidney problems. Okay, what's the recommendation from the compass? It's nationalize the industry, increase quality, control of pollution, and return to traditional farming production. It is a cactus after all. It shouldn't be that hard. Conclusion. The 2 case studies were surprises. Depending on how you feel, on your feel for the objective analysis, compasses tend to comfort expectations. So most of the compasses that I've constructed really did meet more or less what my expectations were. I just selected 2 that were surprising. To change the compass reading, you go back to the data table and you see what data points are pulling the arrow away from the desired direction and which ones are pulling towards. You discourage the ones pulling away and you encourage the ones pulling in the desired direction. This is how we come up with policy recommendations using the compass. It's very transparent, it's very intuitive, it's very easy to see, it's easy to communicate to the public. The reading can be updated in real time, so you can watch, is the policy actually making a difference? Is that arrow actually changing in its length or in its direction? And it can be measured. How do we measure it? Remember the tequila industry compass, that was the black arrow. Remember the desired direction for sustainability, that's the orange arrow. So you have 2 arrows on a circle. Take the distance between them. So take a standard size of circle and you can take your measuring tape, right? Is it 1 meter? Is it 2 meters? I don't know. Call this measurement the compa in length. And then when we talk about responsibility in policy, we might want the policymaker to commit him or herself to say, we as an organization within our control, what we commit to is reducing that length by 3 centimeters in the next 2 years or whatever it is that we make our commitment to. We can measure it, we can see it, we can communicate it, we can watch it. How much time do I have? 2 minutes, 1 minute, 3 minutes? Okay, so this is philosophically sort of interesting. Is this thing objective, right? Because we're talking about social measurements. Social measurements are subjective. You send out questionnaires, people feel different ways about different things. So objectivity has to do with stability. That arrow stabilizes at some point. But if you had 2 teams of people that were making compasses, you might well come up with very different readings. Why? One is that the regional context might be different. So trying to make tequila in I don't know, in Mozambique is not going to be the same as making tequila in Mexico. They might be using different data. The nice thing about the compass is that if they're using different data, put all the data together. There's no problem with adding more data. So if there's interesting data that we're missing, just throw it all in. The baseline might be different. Choosing a baseline is not an innocent part of any sort of exercise. We tend to do it very intuitively, as I talked about the y-axis on a graph, but when we're talking about political things, deciding on your baseline, are you going to compare Ohio State to another Midwestern state, or are you going to compare it to, I don't know, a state in Australia? Or are you going to compare it to Burkina Faso? It's going to be very, very different which baseline you choose. And that's a philosophical question. It's a good question to ask. And it's a question that is drawn out through the compass construction. So that's a debate to be had. What is the fair baseline? Also, your worldview might be different. So you might be emphasizing certain data over other data. So this is the last conclusion slide. The chemical industry has a bad reputation for good reason. It also has a bad reputation for bad reasons because people don't understand a lot of things about chemistry. But the industrial scale production of chemicals is not going to stop soon. Using the institutional compass to evaluate the production use and distribution of chemicals at industrial scale, we can change the reputation to one of transparency and responsibility. There's a way of making the compass also very democratic. I haven't talked about that. And we can use the compass to advise on research directions and priorities as well. We were discussing the other night about education and universities and what is the role of the university now. And one of the roles of university is now to serve the public, I think, a little bit more. And so what are the relevant directions of research that we should be engaging in? And we can use the compass to partly answer that question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. Questions? Yes, Peter? First, Luciana, sorry, I didn't see you.
Hi, thank you very much. This is a very personal topic for me, so I might be concerned about things that aren't presented in this proposal. I think it's a very interesting proposal because I agree with you that calculating the economic is not enough to address the question. But I was thinking that as chemistries, maybe we could include some more objective aspects also related with the subjective perception of these aspects. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, I was thinking about more general problems that are connected with these two cases, like the differences between plastics.
Plastic is not one thing.
Yeah, because of course, medical use, it's totally necessary, but we're not using this way. We are drinking in these cups that aren't recyclable. Right. The cost of recycling is too much. So I was thinking like a green chemistry could help. I don't think it's enough, but it would help to think about the whole process, the life cycle of the substances. And also we're talking about Ohio and Mexico. So there are a very difference in the conditions, like coming from...
The baselines were completely different.
Yeah, coming from Latin American country, we received the trash from Europe and from the United States. So I was wondering, could the people that are in this process realize all of these broader questions that are involved? And I don't think so. And also, yes, I was thinking about sustainability, because in environmental education, we are already like, we're not using this word anymore because it's not enough. And there isn't anything in capitalist society that is sustainable, because we are based on profit and exploration. So I'm sorry if I'm too far from your proposal, but
no, you're right on.
It's just
you're
that
right I didn't
too passionate about this stuff.
Sure. I didn't speak about a lot of these things, but yes, there's a feedback loop, right? So you show the compass to people, then they ask certain questions. So it goes back and forth. It's a dialectic. And the social dumping of pollutions and waste and so on, of course, becomes an issue. And this is a different way of measuring it. So the economy is in there, but it's not the only thing. There are other values that people have. I took a group of students to Mexico. I don't know how much time we have for the questions, but I took a group of students to Mexico, and we talked to activists, we talked to people, the government people, we talked to farmers and so on. They very rarely talked about money. That wasn't what was important. It was that their child was born with a brain defect because of the water. That was important to them. So that then gets more importance on the compass than the money or the lack of money, you see. So, and because the reading is very intuitive, it can be used as a communication to ask questions. And because the particular, there's also in Mexico, one of the problems is people are afraid to talk about certain things, all right? So data can be hidden. Same with when you're talking about Udell Plastics Company, they're very reluctant to tell us certain things, right? Because it's state secret, blah, 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 and they don't want the competition. So, okay, we don't need to know exactly what's going on. We can hide that data, but we're gonna give you the overall thing. You can know exactly what the numbers are. But if you want to change something, then address it. You see, so it's actually quite tactful, or it can be used politically.
So maybe the question would be, can people assess the whole problem? The problem isn't much bigger than what we can individually perceive as the problem.
Yeah, I mean, look, look, we're aware that there's a problem. What are the best ways of assessing those problems? This is going to be much more comprehensive than anything else, but it's also sociopolitically sensitive in that we have to make a conscious decision about what is the baseline, what is an acceptable rate of pollution, what is an acceptable rate of ecosystem collapse. That's a real question, and we have to face that. That's right. Yeah, but it's going to pull all those questions out in a fairly neutral way, because it's just colors and an arrow, right? It doesn't, you're not blaming the industry directly, you see? Yeah.
Peter.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I think I'm sharing the worry you just raised. Like, are we able to assess these kind of problems? Because I mean, these problems are called wicked.
Yeah.
And a disciplinary approach is not going to work. Not even a multi or an interdisciplinary. You really need a transdisciplinary approach here.
Absolutely.
Including stakeholders,
yes,
instead of just academics and politicians.
Yes.
And so,
yes,
yeah, that worries me for sure. But maybe more focusedly, I'm wondering what has driven you to develop this kind of compass, because I'm sure people are working on exactly these issues, and there must already be frameworks out there. So why the need of developing this compass? And then and also, how are you using the compass? Because you raised the worry that if different teams would get together, they may end up with very different compasses that would give very different readings. But I have the feeling that even your compass could give very different readings based on, I guess, how you weigh the different factors that go into getting to this ultimate vector. So
right.
Yeah,
absolutely. So that's a word. Okay, why did I develop the compass? Let's answer that question. Because I found that the existing mechanism, the existing tools were not good enough. They're either looking too complicated, so you need an expert to read them, and you can't communicate them to the public. And the policymakers, the politicians can't understand them either, by the way. So they just get a bunch of experts to advise them, and they follow the advice of the experts. And I find that undemocratic. So I thought, we've got to simplify the representation. How do we do that? And so I thought long and hard about that. And I also found that in a lot of it depends on the particular system, right? So I have a critique of a lot of different systems. I haven't done all of them yet. But a lot of them target particular indicators or particular data points. So you might take longevity in order to represent health of a nation. Well, maybe that's not really what's relevant, right? Maybe the people are much more sensitive to other things. And for example, in Mexico, there's a high rate of kidney failure in children that live close to this river, right? Now, that's not something that the UN development goals are going to say kidney failure in children. Why? Because it's such a rare case, but it's really important for the people there. So that has to be measured. Their voices have to be heard. So I want to draw out those voices. And then there's the political question of how important is that, right? Do we care about a few children in Mexico? Well, if you're living in India, probably not. But if you're trying to make a decision around the Jalisco area and you want to include the voices of these people, then you're going to listen to them. So that's a very political, moral, philosophical question of what is your baseline? What are you comparing it to? So I just wanted to I don't know if I've answered your questions. Yeah. Yeah, and so oh yeah, the mathematics, I can explain that quickly, but I can't do it. I'll have to show it visually because it's a few steps, but it's just an algorithm. But there's a political dimension to it. As I said, one of the reasons why two different groups of people might have different readings is because they might have a different worldview. So they might weight certain statistics more than others. So for example, if you're a diehard environmentalist, you might say we have to look after the environment first, then society, and the economy will look after itself and we don't care, right? So you might weight the environment ones higher, or you might do the reverse. The environment has to look after itself. We're interested in the economy first. That's a different worldview. So then there's a normative little adjustment that's made, what I call a normative normalization, right, on the data. So, but once you've done that, you have to declare that you've done that. And then you become transparent, and then you're responsible for having done that. And does it match reality? Is it really getting you where you want to go? Because what we don't want to go is just getting more money. We want the money for something, for having more choices, for having more possibilities, for at least being able to feed ourselves reasonably, having a reasonable lifestyle. But then beyond that, there's a reason for having the money, right? And that's a qualitative reason. What's the direction you want to go in? If you're young, you want lots of excitement. If you're older, you want to slow down, you want more the harmony. Children, sorry, but they need some discipline too, right? Sometimes you have to just, hey, you gotta learn to hold on to yourself a little bit better and stop being quite, whatever. So there are moments in our lives, moments in different countries where they might want to go in different directions, right? So it's not that everybody wants sustainability right now, etc. Some countries are going to have to go through some excitement in order to then get to harmony. Other countries are more mature and they can just head straight towards harmony, go for a steady state economy, and so on. So there's a lot of different considerations. And yes, you need a lot of different experts. You need expertise in economics, in sociology, in environment, in biology, and all kinds of things. And then if you're doing plastics production, you have to understand something about the plastics production. So yes, you have to ask a lot of people.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michèle. That has been